Hey everybody, welcome to Founders 365 with me, Stephen Hadley. Today I'm joined by Michael, Tobin, and I have to say it, OBE. Congratulations on that. How are you today, Michael?
All good, very good. Thank you very much. How are you, Stephen?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I don't think I've had someone that has probably won so many awards and just done so much cool stuff as well. So I appreciate your time.
I'm lucky to be surrounded by good people. That's all.
Oh, that's almost a gem already. It's like getting into the whole network side of things, but it's good. First and foremost, for people that don't know you, can you just fill us in terms of who you are and what you did or what you do?
So yeah, sure. I mean, I took a data center business that was basically bankrupt back in 2002 called Redbus, consolidated it with another one called Telecity, and we sold it in 2015 for about 3 billion. And since then, I've been working with private equity to buy and sell businesses around the world, predominantly in data centers, but also broad range of technology, including I chair Audio Boom, a listed company at the moment, which is the largest podcasting platform in Europe. I chair Big Blue Broadband, which is high-speed broadband via satellite, which is also listed, and a few other bits and bobs. Ultraleap in Bristol, which is an amazing business that creates the sensation of touch in midair using sound.
Wait a minute. How? What? Who?
Yeah,
how?
I know. It's amazing. It's amazing. But yeah, so very involved in lots of different businesses now that are in various stages of their evolution, and yeah. I enjoy sitting here at home in my British Airways pajamas, doing FaceTimes and Zoom chats with people.
Are you wearing the BA slippers though?
No, I'm barefoot at the moment. So
there we go.
It's just I am wearing the bottoms of the pajamas as well though. Just
good. I mean, that's the classic Zoom.
You don't have any mismatch,
isn't it?
On Zoom.
Yeah. Business on the top, and then just either nothing or full on PJs on the bottom. That's the thing. Michael, yeah, your career is, I mean, the only word for it is impressive. You've done, like I said, you've done some really amazing things. But throughout that whole time of growing these businesses, selling these businesses, getting involved in amazing sort of projects, and we didn't even touch upon, or you didn't touch upon the fact, you've raised a lot of money for charity, 40 marathons in 40 days. I mean, I think that's just madness personally, but we will get onto that more in detail. But throughout all of this, what is it that gets you excited about businesses? What is it when you look at a business and you see, like back when you first started Redbus, or first joined Redbus, like you said, it was near bankruptcy, and you thought, I can turn that around. I can make that something different. What is it that you did?
Yeah, it's funny because I probably have a little bit more thought when I approach businesses now, but that particular one, I just didn't do my due diligence properly. I would never have actually joined it had I realized how bad the situation was.
Oh, wow.
I was sort of hoodwinked into doing it, and before I knew it, I was there, and I was being sort of made responsible as a scapegoat for the disaster, and I had to turn it around, otherwise my reputation would have gone down as well. But I think now, I look for things that are, so there's a number of, it's very rare that a business exists that is a bad business, because it just won't exist, right? So so there are things around it. Maybe it's not well run. Maybe there are people that could be better in it. Maybe there's a cash constraint. There are many reasons why a business doesn't necessarily do well, but it's very rare that you go to a business and say, oh, this is a business that's been running for 2 years, but actually it's just bad. It's not a good business, right? So there's something in it that needs to be changed or evolved or developed or something. And I think that's the key, is trying to find that. And what I do like is the if there are really good people that don't have experience in dealing with something, like, so for example, maybe it's cash flow, and you come there and say, actually guys, you growing the business here is not the be all and end all. If you keep growing at 100% per annum and you keep having to pulling more product and all that sort of stuff. Your customers getting bigger, and they're going to ask for longer payment terms, and suddenly you find yourself strapped for cash. And then the next thing you do, if you're really lucky, you then go out and get cash, but actually you give away all your equity. So then you're super, at the end of this, great business, super successful, but as founders, you've got 5%, and you've taken all the pain and the hassle, and someone else has come in and given you your value. So I think there's a lot of lessons throughout the life of a business that that you can, the experience of learning those, you can impart to people that are going through those journeys. The journeys don't change, right? The journeys are the same. That whether it's a sort of a nuts and bolts or a coffee company, it doesn't matter. It's the same issues exist. Getting marketing, getting the brand right, getting the people right, cash flow, all those things are always the same problems. It doesn't matter what the business is. And helping people, sort of on that journey of learning is a rewarding thing in itself. But if you can tap into, getting some value out of it personally, financially, then happy days.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I always say the same. I always go, every single business owner goes through that same cycle of issues, and businesses go through the same cycle of issues. You mentioned earlier about how, if it was bad business, it just wouldn't exist. Yeah. But what about those businesses that are almost, or those business owners that can't see the problems? How do we deal with them? How do we go in and allow them to see the problems? Or is it just a case of almost just letting them go through the catalyst of explosion?
Yeah, I guess it's quite interesting. Sorry about that. So I think that one thing is that everybody has something to learn. Okay, and so when we go into a business environment, we should be expecting to have a situation that doesn't necessarily pan out the way we want it to, and that's the great moment, is sort of, do I get depressed? Do I get upset? Do I get panicked? Or do I think this is a great learning process? Right now, when you're younger and you have less responsibilities and less liabilities, such as families and mortgages and everything else, you can learn a lot more with less impact to your life and to the people around you. As you get older, you better have learned those lessons. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble, right? So I think that there's a moment where young entrepreneurs have all the opportunity in the world just to get things wrong.
Yeah.
And I find we rarely learn stuff when we get it right. We learn stuff when we get it wrong.
Always.
So in with my kids, I say, there's either success or there's learning. Right? There's no success and failure.
Yeah.
It's not a mistake. You just learn how not to do it.
Exactly. One of my mentors always says, there is no failure, only feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a great believer in, in the concept of just taking every sort of negative as a positive, because you've learned what doesn't work. And, I think this is one of the issues in the UK that we have that's probably wrong relative to the US. And I think if someone goes bankrupt in the UK, he's a pariah. Right? Immediately people say, "Oh my God, he's gone bankrupt. That's terrible." Whereas in the US, if someone goes bankrupt and open up, look at Trump, right? He's gone bankrupt God knows how many times.
4 times or something. I think.
Yeah. So if you go bankrupt in the US, people go, he's a better investable product now because he's kind of de-risked one of those elements.
Yeah.
Say you went bankrupt because of cash flow. Well, he won't do that again. And there's a very interesting difference between the way that people see failure in the US as a stepping stone to success, and how we see it in Europe, mainly in the UK, where people see it as a kind of a brand of kind of negativity.
Yeah, I mean, with that in mind, I'm a firm believer that the US, in terms of mindset and personal development, professional development, they're probably 5-10 years ahead of the UK. In terms of the conversations when you speak to someone in the US, exactly like that, they always are trying to learn. They're always trying to look for that best situation. some of the conversations I have with people in the UK, and this is quite a generalized statement, but it is very much focused on the things that can go wrong. It's the big what ifs.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's it. That's exactly it. And you know, it's kind of, you know, again, when you're looking at, you know, sort of private equity or venture capitalists in the US as well, they'll take much greater risks, and know that, you know, at some point it all works out, sort of thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You will absolutely have some mistakes and some problems, but generally everything works out. So.
Exactly. For you, when you're looking at businesses and you're looking at the potential, what are some of the key factors that you look into now from your years of experience of growing and maximizing on the potentials?
I think you know, surrounding yourself with great people. I mean, wherever I've been, you know, you quickly find people that you believe are capable of doing a fantastic job and are not capable of doing it. And then the ones that are not capable of doing a fantastic job, is not to say you get rid of them instantly, but maybe they don't have the tools, or they don't, or they're just in the wrong space, right? And you know, whenever I recruit someone, I always go for attitude first. I don't care what their CV says, to an extent. I mean, you know, it's kind of, I'm not going to pick someone that's done the job that I want them to do before, because why are they leaving the job they're doing if they're going to come and do it again and be happy, right? So, you know, I'm looking for an attitude. I'm looking for someone that if I ask a couple of odd questions in an interview and go like, they'll go, yeah, okay, as opposed to that's you know, I want that sort of positive attitude. And then skill sets you can train, right? You know, you can never train attitude easily. You know, you can over a lifetime, but not in a job from you know, 9 till 5, you know, 5 days a week. So I'd rather have the right attitude with someone. So finding people, not necessarily with the best skill set portfolio, but the best sort of attitude portfolio, is really important. And then the second thing is allowing people to have that sort of fearlessness of saying, well, I'm going to try things. You know, today we live in a world where, you know, throughout history, everything has been about, how do I do that easier, cheaper, less painfully, more efficiently, and now it's become, how do I not need to do that again, right?
Yeah.
So how do I completely change the landscape that this becomes irrelevant, you know? And you know, we go back to sort of Kodak being kind of the biggest photography company and then disappearing. You know, Uber is now a verb as well as a noun, right? That business is being Ubered because we say, you know, it's just being transformed or it's being made redundant. And I think that, you know, that the attitude that you need in people is great, more important than their ability to do something, because something may not need to be done tomorrow.
Yeah. So
right?
True.
But the attitude of knowing what that might be and knowing that is a risk, I think that is super important. So grabbing a team that sort of is aware of that, and I don't mind companies that kind of try to reinvent themselves regularly. You know, at some point you've got to return value to stakeholders, but generally, you know, I don't mind a few reinventions.
Unless they're on their 10th cycle within 6 months, then you'll probably be sitting them down going, guys, what's going on?
Well, if they're saying I want 10 million to reinvent myself 6 times in 6 months, then that's probably the wrong thing. But
I mean, I'd be impressed if you got it to that 10th meeting in the first place, to be honest.
Yeah, that's right.
But the attitude side is really interesting, because I think there's a lot of people now, a lot of founders that often forget that adaptability side of the attitude, because they get so hung up on what they want to achieve in the next 24 months rather than actually what can we do really well for the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you know, there always has to be a balance, right? I mean, you can't, as I mentioned, you can't permanently be reinventing yourself. You've got to get returns.
Yeah,
you've got to create value. So I always try to sort of my first book was called Forget Strategy, Get Results, which
love that title.
A bit sort of tongue in cheek in a way, but the point being that strategy is too prescriptive, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to tell people every step of the way what to do. You want to kind of say, what do you want to be famous for? You know, what do you put out there as like in X amount of time, I want to be known as the best company to do this, right? And then work back from there. You know, what will that take? What will that take? What will that take? And then you get back to a point where you're in the nuts and bolts of operation.
Mm-hmm.
But if you start from where you are, very, you know, the prescriptive nature of having too much strategy in a world that is constantly changing, you know, it's like having a yacht, right? And your objective, your vision would be to sail to Calais and have lunch in a French restaurant, right? And in the morning you wake up in Dover and the wind is blowing 100% opposite direction. It is right against you. Well, a proper sailor wouldn't say, "Oh, that's it then. You know, my plan of lunch in Calais is off." He'll say, "Well, I'll leave a bit earlier, right? And I'm going to have to tack a lot more, you know, because I'm going to need to go backwards rather than straight. But I'm still, my vision hasn't changed. My tactics are." And tack is an interesting word of tactics, right? So, but you know, my tactics of how do I achieve that have changed. But my vision is the same, and I'm still going to have lunch in Calais.
Exactly.
So it's that kind of it's replacing the strategy with a vision. It's saying, you know, I know that stuff is going to, you know, I think it was Mike Tyson that said, you know, the plan, and when he fought someone, he had a plan of the fight, but you know that all went out the window with the first up on the fact. And Jean-Paul Sartre says, you know, in football, everything is complicated by the presence of the opposite team. You know, and this is brilliant, right? Because what it says is you can have the best plan ever, right? But shit happens.
Yeah, exactly.
and then, you know, that's what you have to deal with. And the differences very often between great companies and good companies or average companies are that they just deal with stuff, unexpected stuff. They deal with that better. And that's a mindset.
Yeah. A lot of people fear that, don't they? They fear the unexpected.
Yeah, or they fear things not going to plan because they go, oh my God, you know, if my plan isn't working, I don't have another one. But that's okay. Even if you don't have another plan, it's because what you're doing is tough.
Yeah.
Right. And that in itself is brilliant, because what that means is there's not many people doing it. When I was 16, I did an apprenticeship. I didn't go to university or anything else. And back in the day, there was no email, there was no mobile phones or anything. And I remember sitting on a bench in Bond Street tube station waiting for a tube at the age of 16, and I had a letter, and I was desperately, you know, sort of, I was kind of half not wanting to open it, but I knew what it was. It was the letter to tell me whether I'd got my apprenticeship or not. And there was a very old man sitting next to me, probably in his 70s or 80s, clearly, you know, probably left us by now, but I didn't know him. And I opened this letter up, and it actually told me that congratulations, you've been awarded this apprenticeship at Rockwell Automation. And the guy next to me, this old man, he probably didn't know what I was reading, but he could see the kind of my face light up, and he was excited. And he turned to me and he said, son, he said, always go the extra mile because there's less traffic there. Right. And this thing has stayed with me forever, because every time you get a problem in life, every time there's an obstacle, right, getting over that obstacle is amazing, because it means that everyone else hasn't. Right. And your ability to differentiate yourself is only possible through your ability to get over obstacles.
Yeah.
So when you arrive at a problem, when you arrive at an obstacle, these are the defining moments to differentiate you to your competition. Right? So if you don't have any problems, you don't have any opportunities to define yourself against your competition. Right? So in business, I've always looked at challenges, mishaps, you know, issues as things that set me apart from everyone else trying to be me.
And no one else can be you, like they say.
No one else can be me. No one else can do the business that I'm doing unless I allow them to. And I allow them to by not addressing the obstacles, sitting behind the obstacle always.
But that also shows how much you take such responsibility for your own success.
Yes, but you take responsibility for your own success because you are the person that can deal with it, right? You can make it or not make it. But you also can take responsibility for surrounding yourself with amazing people and give them the credit of doing everything, right? So, you know, it's kind of, you are responsible for everything in your life, right? And no one can make you unhappy. No one can make you, you know, you made me do that. You made me feel like that. How ridiculous, right? Because only you can do that. However, you are influenced by things on the outside, and you know you're able to put yourself in a position where the influence of the outside is less than the influence that you're creating. And that's what you should always try to achieve, right? And
and it's about working on those filters of what that means for you. You know, everyone has different filters. I really want to put a question you just put out there back on yourself, though, in terms of what do you want to be famous for? I mean, you've done a lot and you're well known, but what do you want to be famous for?
Well, you know, I grew up in a very troubled childhood, and my dad was in prison when I was born. He was a gangster. He wasn't very nice to my mother, and I guess that over my time, I wasn't a very good person in relationships for a long time. My first marriage didn't work, and that was entirely my fault. And I had to get to grips with myself to sort of say, well, you know, you because you weren't loved or because you didn't have something has affected your upbringing. Now, what do you do about it at that point, right? And I didn't have the luxury of sort of therapy or anything else, but I was able to, you know, come to terms with a lot of my failures or my faults, if you like, and say, well, you know, how have they positively changed me as well? So when you sort of coming back to the question is what do I want to be famous for? Well, you know, I want my wife and my children to be proud of me.
Yeah,
for a start, right? And pride in not just simply being successful, but being a good person. And I want to be I want to give back, right? So the luck that I've had in life has been ridiculous. So as I mentioned, I didn't even have A levels. I didn't go to university, and you know, and there are immensely bright people, immensely talented people that never have an opportunity. And I basically said yes to every opportunity that's come to me, basically. I just said, and I found that you know, I found that by saying yes to things, you get opportunities, and you flourish through opportunities. But I also know that I've been ridiculously lucky, ridiculously fortunate. And so I want to sort of give back in life. I do a lot of charity work. You mentioned my 40 marathons in 40 days, but this year, in January, I trekked to the South Pole for children with brain tumors, and we raised over £500,000 for children.
That explains the LinkedIn profile picture.
Yes, it does. So the most brutal thing I've ever done, much harder than running 40 marathons in 40 days, to tell you. But you know, I feel guilty about the luck that I've had in life. That is I feel guilty.
I'm really surprised you consider it luck, though.
Well, you know, there are many, as I say, there are so many people. I mean, just the very fact that we're born in the Western world to in a place where we're not on the streets, and you know, already you're in the top 1% of the population.
Sure.
And up to that point, everything's luck. You had no concept of any contribution to that at all, right? So, you know, so if you're already in the top 1% of potential, then you know you're 99% lucky already. You know, and you know, then we're just talking about kind of tiny differences,
tiny coincidences.
Yeah. So I think, you know, we're all very lucky. We're the fact that we're able to have this conversation, and the fact that people are watching.
Yeah.
They're all lucky.
Very true. Very true. Right. Let's talk about South Pole. Let's talk about the marathons. For you, when you put yourself through, I mean, it's not a nice thing to run 40 marathons. I cannot imagine what your feet would have looked like at the end of 40 days. And
just your feet, you know, you'd be amazed how chafing affects all sorts of places.
Your nipples were just non-existent anymore. But what you know, when you're going through when you're going through pushing your body to those limits, what is it that gets you through that wall? I don't know if you've ever seen that the film with Simon Pegg, Run Fat Boy Run, when he's doing it, and then the brick wall comes up and he starts pushing himself through. I love that part of the film because it's a great analogy for so many things in life.
Yeah, it is. It is.
When that brick wall comes up for you during these endurance events, you know, trekking to the South Pole, it's not something you just do on a Saturday evening. What is it that gets you through that? What is it that gets you to complete it? Because the difference is so many people have attempted things, but you've completed things.
So I think, first of all, your mind is an unbelievably powerful thing, and your body just does what your mind tells it to do. And your body is surprisingly strong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you look back in history of all the terrible events of life, when people were put through horrible things, that bodies really are resilient, right? And they survive incredible things. And it's usually our mind just goes, I don't want to feel that pain. I don't, you know, that's not, you know, it's too much.
Well, but pain in itself is just your mind
saying, okay, I don't like this. It's probably offending whatever, you know, you get something going into your finger. It's like, ouch, I pull my finger away. It's a self-defense mechanism, right? But you can get through it. You can absorb pain. You can deal with pain. You can ignore pain. And there were 3 days actually that that in the marathons, which show that it's your mind that decides what you can and can't do, not your body. The first one, so yeah, I've done many marathons in my life, but never done consecutive marathons. So I never realized what, you know, my body was going to feel like. And I was doing them from 3:30 in the morning to 8:30 in the morning. And then I was doing a keynote speech to people that were sponsoring me on that day. And then I was getting on with my day job, right? So I'd come home, have an ice bath, and then have a breakfast, and then I'd do my job.
Amazing.
Right? And I'll be in bed at 9 o'clock, and then up at 3 o'clock in the morning and start again. So, you know, if anyone says they don't have time, you know, to do something, don't buy it. But the first time was day 21, and I remember. You psychologically, you kind of gear yourself up to, you know, you get to halfway and then it's downhill from there. So day 20 was my halfway point, and I was getting used to it by then. But day 21, I expected to wake up with a kind of a new motivation of saying, I'm on the downhill run now. You know, and
so you can see the finish line.
Yeah, and my brain completely overrode that concept and said, you've got to do all that again. So instead of me thinking I'm on the downhill stretch, my brain was saying, oh my God, everything you've just done, you just got to do it all again.
Your brain had a different story to tell you.
Yeah, and this, you know, like the good fairy and the bad, whatever it is, you know. So you know, my mind was completely tricking my body in a way that I didn't even accept my mind was allowed to do, right? So it was sort of it was putting me into this negative approach, and I needed a positive approach, and I struggled to get out. I really struggled to get out. On day 21, I literally had to just, you know, walk out the door, shut the door behind me, and stand there and like, oh God. And you start with one step in front of the other.
Yeah.
You know, and a marathon is 26 miles, you know, 42 kilometers, or it's 42,000 meters. And if you think about, you know, roughly a step being a meter, it's 42,000 steps, one after the other, right? And then you're done. And then you can go and have a bath again, right? So the point is, you've got to get over that mental state. And your negativity, your mental negativity, is your biggest barrier to stopping you doing anything in life.
Totally.
Anything in life. If you start with oh, that's too big, or I can't do that, well, you're probably right.
Mm.
But if you start with, I can do it, you're also probably right.
So one of my final questions is, when you get that negative thought, so when that sort of devil pops up on your shoulder and starts whispering in your ear, how do you now combat that? Because when you're with the marathon, you've got a really clearly defined goal. You've got sort of a purpose. People are reliant on you. You're raising a lot of money. But what about in a day-to-day situation when that crops up?
Well, it is important, because the fundamentals are very different. And when I used to sleep for 10 years, I slept in the streets every year for homeless people.
Yeah.
And I used to get CEOs of top companies to do that with me, and we'd raise a lot of money. We'd raise £250,000 every year for homeless people. And one of them was the CEO of ITN, actually, and he said to me once, he said, "Oh my God, I'm so glad I did this, because now I really know what it's like to be homeless, and it makes me more empathetic towards it." And I said, "Well, you kind of do, but you don't, right? Because one of the big issues of being homeless is you don't have an end. You were doing this for a night.
Yeah, this evening you're still going back to your house.
Well, this evening you sleep in the street. In the morning you go back to your
exactly.
And but you can deal with it because it's a finite period of time.
Yeah,
and it's kind of it's almost that endless battle that is the biggest issue. It's the not having the way out, right? So I find every time I have a problem that is on day one a really big problem, you first of all, you have to project yourself into, how does the world look when I've dealt with this, right? And you start there, and your mental attitude is completely different, and you go back from there, and you say, okay, first of all, success is never permanent, failure is never fatal, rarely fatal, right? And so even the worst scenario here, that you fail, is a learning process. So we start with that, and the next day after failure, you can get up and go and do something else. So once you get that sort of fear out of the way, right, then you start to look at the possibilities, and you say, well, okay, how do I deal with this? How do I deal with that? So I think it's important to to be able to learn. And when you're younger, and you have less responsibilities in life, and you don't have a family, you don't have a mortgage, you can fail as often as you like with very little consequence, right? And so do it. So, my God, the amount of people that don't take risks when they're young.
Oh, massively.
And your ability to take risks as you get older, just simply because you're building your life and you're building your family and everything else, they decline, right? So you've got to move quickly in life, right? You've got to take risks. You've got to be able to be comfortable in failure, on the basis that you're not calling it failure, you're calling it learning, right? And get out there and say, the consequences of me learning are zero, negative consequences. The upsides are great, right? So getting out there as young people, as young adults, and trying stuff and learning what doesn't work and what does work is super important before you load yourself up with responsibilities where you need to get it right more often than you to get it wrong.
Yeah.
So I think dealing with failure is something you need to get on board with as early in life as possible.
100% agree with that. I'm also going to obviously add something, that it's also never too late. I think people get into that trap, don't they? They go, oh, I'm too old. I've got that family. I've got that stable job. I've got this, and they fall into the trap of then not ever wanting to take a risk.
Do you know? So there's an interesting point, right? It's the quantum that changes, right? Because people end up not doing things in later life because they have responsibilities.
Yeah.
They don't want to jeopardize what they have, something that might be what they could have.
Maybe.
And so I think, but there are ways to kind of take a middle road. you don't have to have an all or nothing story here. You don't.
It's not as black and white.
I'm risking everything to do that, right? So, but there are ways to find a middle road, and I think that as humans, we often look at things as a binary solution, yes or no, black or white. But actually, there are often middle roads of things, and you can do slightly better or slightly different. That doesn't bet the bank, but still takes you on a progressive path.
Well, it's the theory of 1% better every day. Just do 1% that's going to move you towards your goals.
Absolutely.
And those 1% adds up, which is ideal. Michael, listen, I don't want to take any more of your time. I've loved this conversation, and I do feel like we could probably have this conversation for the next 5 hours. So I feel like we're going to have to meet up or something at some point. But on a final note, how can people find out more about you? How can people sort of read more into your story, find out what you're up to, and follow your next ventures?
Well, so I do a lot of charity stuff. So my name comes up all over the place. I have a website called michaeltobin.online, which gives a little bit more insight into some of the stuff I do. People focus on your own, metaphorical website, right? And be fantastic in your life, because it's the only one you're going to have. And look for inspiration, but turn it around quickly and take it and do something with it.
Do something with it. That's it. Implementation. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Michael, thank you so much for that. Like I said, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I know others have as well.
Pleasure.
Thanks everyone for listening and watching. This has been Founders 365.